I was 27 years old the day I finally understood where I stood in my own family. My name is Marianne Colt. I'm 34 now, and I need to tell you about the afternoon my father looked straight through me, like I was furniture in a room he was trying to redecorate. Picture this. Our family's place outside Asheville, North Carolina, one of those wide, wrap-around porches where every important announcement in our family ever got made. My younger brother Desmond was standing there, grinning like a lottery winner, while our father dropped a set of keys into his palm. A brand new condo in downtown Charlotte. Floor-to-ceiling glass, a private garage, a view that probably cost more than most people's houses. My father wrapped him in a bear hug and laughed that thunderous laugh that used to mean the world was safe. That day, it just made me feel small. Then he turned to me. Still smiling, but a different smile now, distracted almost, like he'd forgotten I was even in the room until that second. He slid an old, tarnished key across the porch railing toward me and said there was some land out past Pruitt Ridge, an old tobacco farmhouse nobody had touched in years, and that it was mine now. He said it the way you'd toss a dog a scrap from the table. My mother kept stirring her sweet tea like nothing had happened. Desmond didn't even glance up from his new car brochure. And I stood there, holding that rusted key, understanding for the first time in my life exactly what I was worth to my own father. I drove out to Pruitt Ridge by myself the following Saturday, and what greeted me wasn't a house, it was a warning shot dressed up as an inheritance. The porch had rotted through in two places. Half the windows were shattered or boarded over with warped plywood. There was a hole in the roof over what used to be a bedroom, big enough that sunlight poured straight down onto a floor gone soft with water damage. The well pump hadn't worked in years, and the old smokehouse out back had folded in on itself like a house of cards. My father had walked that land before. He knew precisely what he was handing me. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message, wrapped up and delivered with a smile. I sat in my truck at the end of that gravel drive for a long, long time, just staring at the wreck in front of me. And somewhere in those minutes, something in me hardened. I decided right then, I would not call him in tears. I would not sell that land off to the first developer who waved money at me. And I would not, under any circumstances, prove him right about who he thought I was. So I climbed out, walked up those rotting steps, shoved that swollen front door open, and said out loud, to absolutely nobody, "All right then. Let's get to work." Here's the thing my father never bothered to learn about me, because he never once asked about my life. For the 5 years before that day, I'd been working construction management for a restoration company based in Charleston. I'd read structural surveys. I'd negotiated with lumber suppliers and roofers and electricians. I knew how to pull permits and manage a renovation budget down to the dollar. My father thought he was handing me a punishment. What he actually handed me was a job description with my name already on it. The early months were rough, I won't sugarcoat that part. I made the 4-hour drive out there most weekends, sleeping on a cot in the only room with a solid roof, living off gas station coffee and granola bars, watching my savings account drain into foundation work and framing lumber. My college roommate Priya used to drive out just to sit with me on the tailgate and remind me I hadn't lost my mind, especially after my first contractor took my deposit and vanished. There were nights I sat on those broken porch boards in the dark, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But underneath all that rot, the house had good bones. Original heart pine floors under decades of grime. A hand-stacked stone chimney that took my breath away the first time I scrubbed the soot off it. That house hadn't been left to rot because it was worthless. It had been left to rot because nobody had ever bothered to really look at it. I understood that feeling better than anyone. By month 6, the frame and foundation were solid again. By month 12, I'd finished 3 bedrooms, gutted and rebuilt the kitchen, run new plumbing and electric through the whole place, and replaced every window with something that actually kept the weather out. By month 16, people had started slowing their cars down on Pruitt Ridge Road just to look at what I now called Cotton Hill. And that's exactly when my father decided to show up. He never called ahead. That was always his way, showing up unannounced, like the surprise itself gave him some kind of power over the moment. It was a Sunday morning in late September when I heard tires crunching up my newly graveled driveway. I was out front, planting rosemary along a stone path I'd laid myself, one flat rock at a time. On the weekends my crew wasn't around. I stood up, wiped the dirt off my jeans, and watched his black Cadillac roll to a stop in front of Cotton Hill. He stepped out slow, and just stood there a moment, and I watched something cross his face I had genuinely never seen before. His mouth actually fell open a little. His eyes moved from the rebuilt porch with its new white columns, up along the freshly painted siding, over to the restored barn I'd converted into an event venue, and out across the cleared pastures, the stone walls, the flower beds lining the gravel drive. He just stood there, taking it all in, and I let him. I didn't walk over. I didn't call out. I just watched him finally see it. Eventually he came toward me, smiling, but it wasn't the same smile he'd worn for Desmond that day on the porch. This one had cracks in it. "Marianne," he said, still half turned back toward the house like he couldn't help himself. This is something." I said, "Thanks," and left it right there. He walked the whole property, asking about the renovation, the barn conversion, the landscaping. I answered every question plainly. Not cold, but not warm either. Just a woman giving a tour of what belonged to her. Then he got to the real reason he'd come. He told me Desmond had given up the Charlotte condo. Said the lifestyle had run away from him financially, some bad investments, and that the family thought it made sense for Desmond to come out here and take the property over. "You did all the hard part," my father said, actually smiling like this was a gift he was offering me. "Now Desmond can step in from here. You can go back to Charleston, get back to your real career." He told me I had 3 days to think it over, that Desmond would be out with a moving truck the following weekend. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I smiled, and it wasn't a nervous smile or a polite one. It was real, because some part of me had been waiting for this exact moment without even knowing it. I said, "Dad, before you finish that thought, there's something you should probably see." I led him around to the side porch, opened my laptop on the patio table, and pulled up the business license for Cotton Hill Farm and Events, filed 16 months earlier. I showed him the signed contract with a wedding coordinator who'd already booked the barn solid for the next 10 events. I showed him the revenue from our first full season of bookings, the projections for next year, and the appraisal a commercial property assessor had done just weeks before. His face went quiet somewhere in the middle of those numbers. Then I told him the part that closed the whole conversation. 3 months before, a regional lifestyle magazine had published a feature on Cotton Hill. A boutique hospitality group had reached out afterward, and we were now deep into negotiations on a licensing deal that would place Cotton Hill inside a curated collection of Southern getaway properties. My attorney had already reviewed the terms. My accountant had already gone over the numbers. Everything was moving, with or without his blessing. My father lowered himself into one of the porch chairs, uninvited, and just looked out over the land for a long while. Then he turned to me and said, quietly, "I had no idea you'd built all this." And I said, just as quietly, "I know you didn't." That was the whole conversation. There was nothing left worth saying after that. 3 days later, on the morning Desmond was supposed to show up with his moving truck, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the fog burn off the pasture, when a text came through from my father. It just said, "Desmond's not coming. Cotton Hill is yours." I'm sorry. I read it once, set the phone face down on the table, and sat there listening to the birds for a good long while. Here's what I want you to walk away with. The people who underestimate you simply aren't paying attention. That broken, worthless thing they hand you because they never believed in you in the first place, sometimes that's the exact thing that ends up building you. My father handed me a ruin because he saw a daughter he never took seriously. What he actually gave me was the one corner of my life where nobody else's expectations could get in my way. I rebuilt that farmhouse out of nothing because there was no one standing over my shoulder telling me what it was allowed to become. If you want to do real damage to someone who's quietly determined, just hand them time, space, and a reason. My father gave me all three without even meaning to. Cotton Hill belongs to me now, fully and completely. Desmond is still finding his footing. And I still plant rosemary on Sunday mornings, except now it's in a garden that belongs, start to finish, to a woman who was never actually the lesser child to begin with. He just never looked closely enough to notice.